I can't believe this. They built this fence 3 feet onto my yard, and they didn't even ask. This is unbelievable.
I came back from vacation and discovered a brand new fence standing along what I believed was my property line, except it wasn't actually on the line at all. It was built 3 feet inside my yard. Karen was in her backyard admiring her fence when I walked over and asked her why there was a fence on my property. She turned with that familiar smug expression and said this was the property line and that she had it surveyed. I told her the real property line was 3 feet the other way and that the fence was clearly on my land. She insisted I was wrong and claimed a professional surveyor confirmed it. She told me I should check my deed. I said I would, and warned her that if the fence was on my property, it would be coming down. She laughed and said good luck with that because the fence cost her $15,000 and it was staying where it was. If I had a problem, she said, I could take it up with the HOA. I reminded her she was the HOA president. She said exactly, and that the fence was legal and properly placed, and that the discussion was over. I went inside furious and pulled out my property documents, then called a licensed surveyor, not whoever Karen had used. 3 days later, the surveyor arrived with his equipment and spent 2 hours taking measurements, checking county records and placing markers. Finally, he pointed and said my property line was 3 feet past Karen's new fence. He told me the fence was entirely on my property and that she had also built it over my drainage line. I asked if he could put that in writing and he said absolutely, promising a certified survey report within 48 hours. When the report arrived, it was even better than I expected. Not only was the fence completely on my land, but Karen had also paved over part of my property for her patio extension, another 2 feet of encroachment. In total, she had taken about 600 square feet of my land. I contacted a real estate attorney who said the case was clear-cut because Karen had built permanent structures on my property without permission. She explained that I could demand removal or demand compensation for the land value and damages. I asked what kind of compensation that meant. She said the fence and patio were improvements to my property that I never authorized, so Karen could either remove them at her own expense or pay for the land value, which in this area could be worth $30,000 to $40,000, plus the cost of the improvements she made, including the $15,000 fence and the patio. I smiled and realized that meant around $50,000 at minimum, plus legal fees if she fought it. My attorney sent Karen a formal letter with the certified survey attached. Her response came the next day, accusing me of fraud and claiming her surveyor said the placement was correct and that she would not.
Okay, let's check the boundary. Right, the numbers show an overlap.
So it's on the neighbor's land?
Yes, we'll need to adjust.
Pay me anything. My attorney replied quickly and said we would see her in court. Karen hired another surveyor, and 2 weeks later that surveyor confirmed the same thing. The fence was 3 feet onto my property and the patio extended another 2 feet. She tried again and said both surveyors were wrong and that she would get a third opinion. My attorney responded that the county records agreed with both surveys and told her she had 2 choices: remove the structures at her expense or pay $52,000 for the land value and improvements plus legal fees. Karen called an emergency HOA board meeting to discuss the dispute, and I attended with my attorney and all the survey documents. Karen claimed I was trying to extort her and said it was absurd that I thought her fence was on my property. My attorney calmly laid out 3 certified surveys and county records that all confirmed the encroachment and stated that Karen had built a $15,000 fence and a $12,000 patio extension entirely on my land. The board members reviewed the paperwork and the treasurer said the measurements clearly matched the county records. Karen argued that the records were old and that boundaries change. My attorney replied that boundaries do not change without a legal transfer of property, and there had been none. He said she had built on land she did not own. Karen refused to pay the $52,000 and called it highway robbery. My attorney told her then she would have to remove the fence and patio at her own expense, which she admitted would cost $20,000. I told her she should have surveyed properly before building. Karen tried one last tactic and said the HOA would cover it as a community expense. The board president shut that down and said it was her personal property dispute and the HOA would not pay for her mistake. We ended up in court where Karen's lawyer argued that she acted in good faith and should not be punished. My attorney presented the surveys, photos, county records, and proof that Karen had ignored multiple warnings before trial. The judge ruled quickly that Karen had built permanent structures on my property without permission and must either remove them within 60 days at her own expense or pay fair market compensation. Karen chose to pay instead of paying for removal. The total with legal fees came to $58,000. The fence came down the day after the check cleared. I hired my own contractor and built a new fence exactly where it belonged on the true property line. Karen barely speaks to me now and just glares from her yard, which is 3 feet smaller than she once believed. I smile and wave every time because sometimes being right is very expensive for the other person.